As we moved into the beginning of July, it was finally the peak of thunderstorm season on the first coast. This month tends to have the most thunderstorm days out of any month of the year, and some of the most explosive thunderstorms of the year. However, the types of thunderstorms we saw on this day were less about the thunder and lightning, and more about the heavy rainfall that was dumped on much of our region. Despite this, a few strong thunderstorms and some decent lightning did occur around our area. Taking a look at the morning area forecast discussion, the atmosphere was primed for thunderstorm development. A broad area of low-level troughing was residing over the deep south and was preparing to start sinking further down into Florida. This troughing would help provide lift for the development of widespread showers and thunderstorms. In addition to the trough, the two sea breezes we have become accustomed to discussing over the summer would help provide more localized forcing. Unlike the day prior, severe thunderstorms were in the forecast for parts of our local area. According to the Storm Prediction Center's convective outlook, a marginal risk for severe thunderstorms was outlined for much of northern Florida, extending into the Panhandle and up through much of Georgia and coastal South Carolina. The main risk that was expected for the day was isolated damaging wind gusts. These wind gusts would likely happen in association with downbursts and thunderstorms. The more relevant outlook to our story, however, came from the Weather Prediction Center. Portions of extreme northern Florida were under a slight risk of excessive rainfall, outlined by a marginal risk extending down through the rest of the first coast and back into the Panhandle. A small pocket of moderate risk was also placed along the eastern Georgia and South Carolina coastlines. Zooming back in on our local area with the SPC surface analysis, we could see the atmospheric conditions were once again ripe for stormy weather. Strong daytime heating would combine with an extremely moisture-rich atmosphere, helping to create high temperatures in the upper 90s and lower 100s. Heat indices would reach into the 110s and even the 120s during the hottest parts of the day. All this hot, humid air would lead to decently strong CAPE values, with surface-based CAPE ranging from 3,000 to 4,000 during peak heating, with values still holding on in the 1,000 to 2,000 range after sunset. Mixed layer CAPE would be slightly more modest, generally ranging from 2,000 to 3,000 throughout the daytime hours. The last ingredient in helping to develop thunderstorms was the extreme amounts of moisture in the atmosphere, with precipitable water values ranging anywhere from 2.0 to 2.5 area-wide. This is extremely deep tropical moisture and would help contribute to the widespread and heavy downpours our area would see later in the day. Scattered showers would begin to pop up around North Florida towards the noon hour, closer to where the surface trough is located in western Florida. Along with the surface trough, the Gulf Coast sea breeze would begin to push inland into portions of north central Florida. Shower activity would remain somewhat spotty until about 3 p.m. as more showers and some thunderstorms began to fill in along the I-75 and I-10 corridors. These showers and storms would push an outflow boundary northward out of the state and into southern Georgia, which would help organize more thunderstorms later in the evening. Showers and storms would develop in our portion of the first coast around 4:30 p.m. as outflow from the aforementioned cluster of showers and storms helped push the Gulf Coast sea breeze further through the St. Johns River Basin. The Atlantic sea breeze would meet up with the Gulf Coast sea breeze around 5 p.m., which helped spur the creation of more showers and storms. By 5:40, the initially isolated cluster of shower and storms would begin to form a more linear cluster, spanning from Interlachen up to the Florida-Georgia border in Nassau County. This is around where our part of the story begins. With the linear cluster of storms positioned just to our west, I decided to step outside to record to see if we could get some lightning shots. While the first one didn't have the bolt on camera, you can definitely hear it strike. It would take a few more minutes, but eventually we got to see a nice clear lightning strike right in frame. After about 15 minutes of the storm being relatively quiet and not showing off much lightning, I decided to bring the camera inside. Soon afterwards, a special weather statement would be issued for a portion of the line out to our west. We decided to head further down the road away from the storm to try and get a better view on it, and I have to say, this is probably one of my favorite views I've had on a thunderstorm.
Honestly, I don't know what that's about. Because that's like the second one that showed up in that area, isn't it? The first one was we were driving out of the neighborhood. Yeah. Well, like all this is, you just got one. I think you just got one right behind you. Yeah, I think so. It's close.
Other than some gusts of wind and the one lightning bolt, the rest of our time spent watching the storm was pretty uneventful. After around 15 minutes, we decided to head home. Over the next half hour, more heavy downpours would form to our east and would slowly drift west towards home. These weren't thunderstorms, more so just heavy rainmakers. Stratiform rain would continue over much of the first coast through 10 p.m. as the storm that had a special weather statement on it previously slowly drifted off to the northwest over the remaining few hours of the evening. As mentioned throughout this video, the primary weather impact of the day was the heavy rainfall. In total, 9 different flash flood advisories were issued throughout the day, with many of them occurring in southeastern Georgia or along the Florida-Georgia border. However, we did have a flash flood advisory locally, which covered a large portion of Clay County and portions of 3 other surrounding counties, those being Baker, Bradford, and Duval. Looking at the storm total accumulation, rainfall estimates exceeded 3 inches across much of the counties along the western St. Johns River Basin. Pockets of Clay, Duval, Baker, and Nassau counties were the areas that saw the most rain. The heaviest estimated area of rainfall happened just across the Florida-Georgia border, though, a bit to the northeast of Folkston. Here, radar estimates almost 5 inches of rain fell. Also of note is the sharp cutoff of rain east of the St. Johns River. Looking back at the radar, you can see that barely any showers or storms formed off of the outflow that was pushed out of the storm complex once it crossed the river. I hope you enjoyed my analysis of the storms we saw on July 1st. Despite not being particularly intense, I still felt it was fascinating to see how the downpours and thunderstorms progressed throughout the day. If you enjoyed this video, consider leaving a like and subscribing if you haven't already. It helps the channel reach more people and lets us know that you enjoy what we do. Thanks for watching, and we hope to see you in the next one.